Hello, my friends, and welcome to our 14th hands-on demo. This is the session where I show you how to design in Penpot live, and that means you can ask questions live, and you can say hello as well, just so I know that I'm not here by myself. I can say, hi, Pablo, I can already see that you're here, and I don't know, let me know who you are and where you are. I'm Laura, and I'm in Ireland. I'm not Irish. Some people might have guessed that. So, Penpot is the web-based open source design platform, in case you didn't know already. And if you want to keep up with these hands-on sessions in the future, you can subscribe to whatever platform you are currently watching this on, and you will be the first to find out about these demos. And of course, you can also give me a nice little reaction if you find these videos useful, or you can leave a comment if you have any feedback about what you want me to demo in the future. Today, we're going to be updating the prototyping template. So I am just in Penpot in my dashboard here, and let me show you. If you want to get hold of the template yourself, as it currently is in its current state, you can go to Penpot's libraries and templates. If you haven't been there before, it's full of loads of really valuable templates and libraries that you can use for free with Penpot. And this is the prototype examples template here. So it was last updated in August 2024, and this was the first ever template I made for Penpot. So there's a lot to be updated. Now, we won't be focusing on the prototyping aspect of the template today. There's already a hands-on demo for that was maybe about a year ago. We're just going to review the template and look at areas we will be improving. So that includes adding components, adding component variants, adding design tokens. So, are we ready to jump in? Let's start on creating components. So this is just the how-to page for the template, so that's not particularly relevant right now. So I'm going to jump to this little navigation example. So this is an example of how you can prototype navigation in Penpot. So these are little links, and you can click them when you're in view mode and navigate between these different views. But we're going to look at the designs themselves. So first of all, why do we even want to make components? So components are valuable because they're essentially reusable design patterns. We want to be able to take a bit of our design and save it so we can use it again in the future. And that can save us a huge amount of time, particularly if we want to update all of the uses of that component across our design, and we just need to update it once. So let's have a look at it. What are good candidates for components in this design? Now, components can contain other components. It's worth bearing that in mind. So for example, here we have a lot of these little posters, or these little product, if you include the text and the little price information. So that could be a component. The top of each page, we have a header, and we have navigation. The header contains the logo. We have a couple of navigation links. I think that's a prime candidate for a component. I mean, even the link itself could be a component. So let's, first of all, let's make one for our heading. Header. I keep confusing heading and header. I know the difference. Heading is the title text. A header is the thing at the top of the page. I'm not just trying to convince myself. So we have our navigation here. It's usually common practice to put your components on a different page because it just makes it everything a bit neater and tidier, but I might just make it on this current page just for ease of use right now. So I want to create a navigation component. I have all the things I need in my component here. So I'm just going to copy that and paste it over here. And this is going to be a component, but maybe I might make the link. I'm thinking ahead, and I'm thinking this link here, it has two different options for it. It has like a highlighted option and a standard option for it. And so maybe I want to have a component for doing that as well. So I'm going to grab this link. You can see that I didn't really use layouts a huge amount in here either. So here we go. We've got a shop all link and we have a trending link. And this is the default link. I can't type. So I'm just going to put this default text in there because our component, we can edit the text in the component later on. So this is an active link, and we probably want to center align that. And to create components out of these, I can right click them and choose to create a component, or I can use this keyboard shortcut. So I'll just use the keyboard shortcut. And you see this has created a component that is, you can tell it's the main component. It's got this little double diamond. It's called it trending because that was the name of the folder. So I'm going to rename that active. And I'm going to create another component using Command K, and this one is default. And because I'm going to look a bit later at potentially making those into variants, but I will go into that bit a little later on. So now we have two components. We want to put them inside of our navigation. So our navigation is made up, it has a logo in it, and it has this group of links. And right now it has just trending and shop all. If I delete those, actually I'm not going to delete them because I deleted the folder, and I'm going to grab these components. So when I've created a component, it becomes available in my local library, which is accessible under assets. For some reason, the thumbnails aren't loading. That's gremlins in my internet, I think. So I'm just going to drag these components out. At least I can see what they are when I hover over, or I can switch to the view where I can just see their text. And I'm going to go back to layers and pop these instances. These are the components in use, so not your main component. A copy of your component is just a single diamond. And I'm going to drag that into this links folder. And I'm going to delete those original links. And I know I didn't mention, but why not show you Flex Layout? Because we want to make this laid out a bit better. At the moment, this is just a group of links. So they're connected together so I can move them around together. But I want them to always flow side by side with an equal amount of space in between them. And for that, I can use Flex Layout. So I'm going to jump to Layout here, add Layout, add Flex Layout. So that has converted this group into a Flex Layout. And right now it is flowing from right to left. I want it to flow from left to right. I want them to be vertically centered. It's okay if they're left aligned. I'll maybe put 10 between each item. So you see it will always put that in between there. I want the group to fit around its contents, both at the height and the width. This navigation already has a flex layout on it as well. It's even set to wrap so that if it gets very narrow, the contents will drop onto another line. So there we go. We have navigation that contains these default and active links, and I'm going to create a component out of that as well. And so now I can drag my navigation component out, and I can replace it there with this one here. And then if I want to update the text, I'm just using, if you see I'm suddenly clicking and I'm managing to click the exact text that I want to change, that's because I'm holding down the command modifier key. That's a really handy keyboard shortcut if you want to get through all these layers. And so this would be trending, and this would be shop. Oh, and so that is how we create our components. If I then wanted to use these components across other designs that I'm building, I could go into my assets, and if I go to manage library, I can publish my file library as a library that is usable across the entirety of my team in Penpot. And likewise, if there were libraries shared by my team, they would appear here, and I could connect these to the current file. And they would appear, so we've got a local library here, and then there would be other library name appearing below. And that's how you can create a wider design system where you don't have everything inside of one file. So Let's test out this live aspect then, as I'm currently just been talking to myself. Do we have any questions so far about components or designing anything in Penpot? Okay, and so that's a reminder that if you do have any questions, whatever platform you are on, although preferably it be, I think, YouTube or PeerTube or LinkedIn, you can ask questions and I will try to respond to them here live. If I don't manage to respond to them live, I will come back to you later on afterwards. I'll make sure I try to answer all of the questions. So let's move on to component variants. We want to look at those next so that we can look at this. So variants are basically predefined options for your component. So for example, we said before active and default, these are different types of the same component. So having two different components for this isn't particularly useful. It's very easy. If I've already created components for each of these link states, I can select those main components and I can choose to combine them as variants. And what this does is creates a new component out of these two previous components, and it has decided that each of these are variants of that component. So if I look in the layers panel, my component is just called component, so I'm going to call this navigation link. And this sort of little diamond made of diamonds or diamond made of dots icon signifies each variant. And you can see that the previous name of the component is used as the value for the variant. So if I've got a drop down between active and default, and I'm going to say that this is state. So the property is state, and the options for state are default or active. And you can have as many variants as you like, although you have to bear in mind that you want to also be able to handle combinations of variants, maybe some variants. So maybe I had a different color for my little highlight here. Maybe if I had a red variant and a blue variant, as well as an active variant and a default variant, I would have to make sure I designed for each possible scenario there. So that is with the variants. And so maybe I'll show you some different variants as well. Oh, I'll show you variants in use, by the way. So if we go back to our previous navigation component, we've got our navigation links here. And you see, when I've got my navigation link component selected, notice that it automatically updated. I can choose between the default and active state from the drop-down menu. So that's really handy if you're trying to build systems when you're working with other people as well, and you want to show them the different options that are available to them. Let's have a look at, I don't know, maybe this poster here. This is another design that is absolutely ripe for a flex layout. So let's give that a go. So we have a poster and it's currently a frame, a little image of some flowers, a mount, that's some picture terminology for you there, and they're all grouped together in this poster. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly recreate this as flex layout. So you notice if I change that into a flex layout, it treats each of its component parts as individual items because they're being arranged as their own inside of their flex layout themselves. So we don't want that. But if you look at the different aspects of this design, so we have a border here with a dark blue, grayish blue background. We have a mount, which is also a grayish blue background, and we have an image. So I can actually recreate this effect. I'm going to drag these out of my flex layout, so I don't need those anymore. Now my poster is always going to be the same size, so it's currently 131 by 181. That's a peculiar choice. I'm actually going to make it 130 by 180 because I like a round number. And so first I want to recreate the shadow and the stroke and the fill on this. I can copy those properties and paste them onto my image. Oh, it's got rid of my image. I didn't think that through, did I? Okay, so I'm going to just recreate this very quickly then. So I'm recreating the stroke color. It's got a nice little shadow on it. It's me, so we'll have quite an even looking shadow on it, I think. I'm quite particular about that. And I want to create the mount effect. I can do that with a second stroke on the inside. And the color of that was blue. And if I make it nice and thick, it will overlap. And then I drag that so that it appears below the brown one. Let's drag. Come on, Laura, you learn how to use a mouse properly. Drag it, come on. I think I might have maybe just found myself a bug. Yep, dragging's not working, but that would be how I would create that stroke. And then I could create a component out of the poster. And then if I wanted to do a different version of it, different variant for it, it's another way I can create a variant. I'll copy the component, detach that component. So right now, if I make any updates to this, it will change this, and I don't want that to happen. So I can detach the instance. And then I want to change the flowers image inside of that to a different image. I'll use the buses. So I'm going to paste that in, get rid of the flowers. And again, I would want to copy all of those styles over. I won't do that right now. Or did I? I copied it into the wrong one. I confused myself because that is to the right. Oh, I've confused myself again. Okay. She's easily confused today. That's what's going on. Okay, so paste that in. There we go. Get rid of the flowers. Okay. And then I'll create a component out of that. So these are now two different components. And then if I combine them as variants, and so now I have one component, two variants, and I can then decide this would be picture, maybe, because I'm saying what the picture is or what the image is, probably a bit more accurate. And this one would be called buses, or bus, and this one would be called flower. And then if I wanted to use that poster component, I would drag it out of my library, and I can choose between bus and flower. It doesn't look as pretty as the other ones. And maybe I could create different variants for the different mount colors and design aspects like that. So anyway, that we go is variants. A quick reminder that with any of the files that I create in these hands-on sessions, after the session, I download it straight away and I go into the Penpot community, and I always have a post about the hands-on demo and I upload the file. So if you want to mess around and see how easily I broke things or try things out for yourself, or see exactly how I did it in a bit more detail, you can always go to the Penpot community after the fact. So, do we have any questions now? A reminder that you can ask questions in whatever platform that you're on, and I will do my best to get to them. Now, I just switch the interface so I can read this. Right. How does Penpot avoid circular dependencies between components shared across files? I don't know how, but it does. It is not an issue that I've come up against before. So I don't know. Maybe someone in the comments will be able to answer that a bit a bit better than I could. But I have not come across any issue with having circular dependencies as yet. So you can reference components from other libraries as well. Does renaming a library component break its connection with instances in other documents? I always feel so much pressure in naming my components. I think this was discussed before. Oh, I totally identify with that. No, you can rename your library components and it updates them, no problem. And there's no commitment in that sense. It is slightly different when it comes to design tokens, and so I would bear that in mind in the future. Variants usually are handled pretty cleverly as well. You can make a lot of changes and before Penpot becomes confused about how different it is. Um, I guess it's kind of a philosophical question about how much is a variant still a variant if you change so much about it. But yeah, you can generally do a huge amount, and the connection and its variantness or its componentness will be saved. Great. So let me move on to the next section. I just mentioned that design tokens were slightly different, so let's take the opportunity to jump into design tokens. Now, design tokens are a relatively new feature of Penpot, and one of the things that's great about them is that they are standardized across the web industry, which is also kind of tech more broadly. While design tokens are currently associated more with web technologies, many apps and things like that will also use something like design tokens. But there is a design tokens standard, and Penpot follows that, which means that you can import your design tokens that you've created in other platforms that support the same format, and they will work magically in Penpot. So this is great. What is a token? So tokens are kind of like components in a way, except they are the tiniest little design decisions that you make. So if I open up the tokens panel here, you can see I have options for border radius, color, font family, font size. I've skipped past dimensions because I don't want to confuse you. Sizing, rotation, opacity. So these are single values, and design tokens are a way of saving those single values with a name, essentially. And so we have a variety of different token types as well. I'm going to jump to a different page. So here I have some button states. This is just prototyping how your buttons might work. So this is a default button style. If you hover over it, it goes a different shade of purple. And when you click on it, it says processing. And it's, again, a very subtly different shade of purple. So this is a good candidate for design tokens. I'm just going to have a look at the time. And because I have the time, I'm also going to refactor these buttons themselves. Because I've done them in quite a peculiar way, quite an old school way, I would say. So as before, this button is a group that has a background color and a radius on it. It has text inside of the group, and it has the background is the background color with the radius on it. So nowadays, I wouldn't create a button like this. Why? Because what if I change the size of the button? The text, that's because if I change the size of the background, the text remains in the same location. What if I make it smaller? Text is no longer inside the button. This is another benefit of flex layouts. And so I'm going to create a new board, and I'm going to just copy that text. A button starts with its text if you're using flex layouts. It's white right now, so you can't see it. I'm just going to set the text to the width of the box of the text to the width of the text, which will make sense if I. There you go. Now you can see it. The box fits exactly the width of the text. Let's change that back to white. Excuse me. And now I'm going to add a flex layout to that text. So this creates a group around my text that is a flex board, and this will be my button itself. And I want to use this kind of bluey purpley color as the background for my button color. I'm going to go into tokens, and I create a color token. And I am going to call this, now I could just call it blue, but what if I have loads of different blues? And so what is helpful is to give your tokens meaningful names. Semantic is a word we often use when we're talking about this. So a name that is descriptive and that you can understand if you want to reuse it again later, or the rest of your team do as well. The way that you name things in tokens is use dots to separate each word or each grouping. So I could call it button. It's the background of the button, so maybe I would call it button background. Some people would put color at the beginning because it's a color, but that's just going to make things a bit verbose right now, so I won't do that. And I'm going to put that color in there. So button background is this color. And I'm going to apply that to my currently invisible button. So I've selected the button, I go to the token, and I can either click it or I can right click it and choose fill. And that has applied that color. My button text has a color as well. I'm guessing that color is white. Yes, it is. So I'm going to say button.text and paste the color in there and set that for the button text. Now, you can see this is a very strange looking button. It has no tiny little target area for you to click it. It doesn't even really look like a button. So let's give it some padding and let's give it some nice rounded corners. Now in Penpot, of course, I can set the rounded corners in this option up here. But let me think, maybe I want to reuse the same rounded corners, the border radius, on every button that I have in my design. So for that, I might call this button radius. And I'm just going to guess what that was. Is it 30? Let's see how good I am at identifying radius. Actually very hard to tell when it's this size. It needs some padding. That's what it needs. Now padding is controlled under the spacing token type. And I'm actually going to have a quick look at the size of this. Oh no, because I've laid this out statically, it has no padding. So I will have to guess. I'm going to say, okay. Now, I could call this a padding token, but if you think about spacing, spacing could be padding, it could be margins, it could be the gaps in a flex layout. So a lot of different things you could use spacing for. So spacing is a bit of a more generic term that's easy to remember. Button spacing, maybe I will call it. Spacing you do tend to use across the whole amount of your design. You might want things to align in a particular way and have consistency across every single component. So you might not specify spacing just to buttons. And maybe I'm going to call this medium spacing. So I might call this spacing.md for medium. And I'm going to say that's 12, 15. So at least round to fives. And then if I want to apply that, you see if I right click on my token, I could apply it to the gaps, but there's no gaps in this layout right now. I could apply it to all of the padding. So that goes on top and right and bottom and left. Or I could just do the horizontal or just the vertical. And maybe I want to create a different form of spacing for this on either side. I'm going to call it large, spacing.lg, and I will make that, 60 seems big. You'd probably make the scale proportional in some sense, but I am just making it up as I go along right now. So I'll put my horizontal padding as that larger one. And so there we go, we have our button. Now, maybe I want to create the hover version of it. I haven't thought about that when naming this, have I? So I'm going to change the name of this token to button.hover.default.background. The other one will be hover. If I change the name of my token, it is going to break that link to that token across all the tokens, all the objects I've already created that use that token. So bear that in mind. You only want to be changing your mind right at the beginning. That's what that warning that flashed up was telling me. So I'll reapply that. And then maybe I'll make a different color for button.hover.background. What was the fill color? It's that purple. I'm just going to chuck a guess out there at that shade of purple. I'll copy paste it in a second. Okay, it was that hex value. Let me update that. And so then if I want to create the hover version of the button, I'll duplicate it and choose the hover fill color. Fill colors, if I click on a color, it will automatically change the layer fill. But if you want to refine it and apply it to the stroke, you need to right click to be able to do that. And so that is some very basic design tokens and how we can use them for different objects. I can see that the chat has been streaming away while I've been talking in the corner of my eye. So do we have any questions so far? Anything to do with design tokens or components? If you're watching live, you can ask questions. If you are not live and you're watching this back later and you have questions, please feel free to ask them and I will try to go back and answer them later on. Or if you want to jump into the Penpot community, that's another great place to ask questions too. Oh, I see I have a question. I've seen slightly different recommendations on how to name design tokens. Is there a standard naming convention you recommend? No. Basically, there are a few sort of standards emerging, but really it's down to what suits you and your team the best. A lot of the design tokens nerds will argue that different approaches that have been recommended as good for everyone are not really ideal. One of the ways to think about it, I would say, is try not to create a token for absolutely everything. You only need a token, like a component, if you're going to use it again. Also, try to make your tokens consistent for your team. So for example, as I was saying, with medium spacing and large spacing, if I maybe had a small, an extra large, you probably want to make the differences between those tokens consistent and predictable, and that makes them more useful as part of the design as well. When you're naming them, generally you do want to go from the broadest descriptor to the most specific descriptor. I'd say that's a fairly standard convention. So what that means is go from, first of all, it's a button, then it's the hover state of the button, then it's the background of the hover state of the button. I hope that makes sense. It makes sense to me, but that doesn't mean it makes sense to you. And if it is a token that you are likely to apply across a huge range of your designs, then consider making it something more broad, like spacing dot a value. And you can choose to create sets that are applied globally, or some sets that you turn on and off for different themes. I will show you that in a minute. And so you can control specificity in different ways as well. So I really want to show you the next section because I think it's really exciting. It's a very new feature into Penpot, and I think it's the first time I'm going to demo it. It is designing typography tokens. Now, typography tokens took a while to come to Penpot because they are a very specific, special new type of token, and that is a composite token. If I go to scroll down here to create a typography token, if you open up the interface, you can see that a typography token doesn't just have one value. It has all these different values, and these values can reference other values as well. I didn't mention referencing before. That's probably a useful thing, so I'll tell you about that in a minute. And so these composite tokens mean you can store everything about the typography of a piece of text in one token. So you can see the value of that if you have that set, and then you can just select any other text you want, apply the token, and done. You don't have to remember the font size. You don't have to remember the font family. All of those values automatically stored. So that's incredibly useful. So I'm going to jump into, I'm looking at my notes to see where did I thought I would do typography tokens back with our posters. It's a bit more interesting typography than just buttons in there. Okay. So if we're looking at our design overall here, we have a few different typographies emerging. We have this kind of display title typography here, this serif font, and it's quite big. We have navigation links, and this is a bit big, a bit bold. We have our kind of little paragraph or sentence descriptive text here. So it's smaller, sans serif. And then we have even smaller text here with the prices as well. So these are all examples of typographies. Some of these typographies have things in common. So for example, all of this sans serif text is using the same typeface, or the same font, which is Kala. And so that's a good place to start with our typography. Now you saw before when we were talking about creating typographies, I'm going to call that set that I made before the button set, just so that I don't confuse myself. And this will be the poster store set. There we go, and I'm enabling it, just so we don't muddle up our tokens. Now, we identified that these are using the same font family. So what I could do is I could create a token for my font family, and I could do that. I could create it and I could apply it to all that text and just have the shared font family. In fact, I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to, how am I going to call this? I'm going to say family, just so that I remember what, if the token is presented outside of its context, maybe you're using it in the development process, and you can understand what type of token it is without having to look at the type. And I'm going to say sans for sans serif, and I'm going to choose the font from this drop down, search for it, Kala, and I'm going to save that. And so now I have a family sans token. So I could apply it to all of these like this, and it's not going to change anything because they were already that same font family. But if I wanted to change it to a different sans font, say Inter, I could update it and it would change it across all of those uses of the font. And I can also say undo to undo that change. And maybe I have a different one for family serif. I said family and typed font. That was some strange brain situation going on there. Oh, I should look up what that font family is. It is Trocky. Family.serif. And that one is called Trocky. Save that. And I can do the same for my font sizes as well. Oh, I undid the change. So I can type. Let's fix that. There we go. I'll update it again. And so if I look at the different font sizes I have in use, I have 18, I have 15, I have 15, and what's this one? 13. So maybe I create a bunch of font sizes. Font size, if you're using multiple words in a design token, lately I've been dash separating them, kebab casing them, rather than say camel casing them like that. Just because I think it's more readable, but that is also a convention up for grabs. Do whatever works for you. I'm never going to have a font size smaller than 13. I can promise you that. And so that's the value. So I'm going to call that extra small and say 13. I'm going to say font size small is 15. This is me trying to remember numbers. I am the worst at that. 21. 18. Okay. Font size MD 18. So that's my medium. Font size LG 21. Okay. So I have some font sizes and I have some font families. And now I'm going to create a typography utilizing those. So let's think this is going to be my default text that's on every page, sort of paragraph style text. So maybe I'm going to call this typography.paragraph. I could just call it paragraph. I'm being quite pedantic saying typography. And then I could choose that same font family from the list, or I could close the box. Paragraph. I could reference the token that I've previously created here inside of this input. So I can say family dot sans, and you can see that that will now resolve to Carla. And that means that if I create multiple typographies that are all using family.sans, if I then want to update that font family across the entirety of my design, I only have to update family.sans and I don't have to update every single typography. So that is the benefit to using references. That's what it's called when you use these curly brackets in there. And the paragraph size, I think, was small. So I'm going to reference font size dot small. The font weight, so that's different. Do I need to have a specific token for font weight? Probably not, because the bold font weight is probably always going to be bold. The regular is probably always going to be regular. You probably want to, if you're changing your font family, you might update the weight, because that font family, its 600 weight might look a bit heavier than another font family's 600 weight. And so I'm going to just say that for this, it is, I'm guessing it's about 400. And the same with line height. You could have like a tight line height and a loose line height. You could use calculations. I could say something like, maybe my line height should always be my font size multiplied by 1.2, which is essentially what happens if you do that. But I could do some clever calculations like that. That is an option. But right now I'm just going to type it in, because you don't want to over create on tokens, because that could possibly create more for you to maintain. If you're only likely to use this value in relation to this particular token, leave it. It's no problem. And you don't need to fill out all of these. So I'm going to save that. Now, if I select all my paragraphs and choose the typography.paragraph, that has now applied it. So then if I later on down the line decided, okay, I actually want to make my paragraphs use serif fonts instead, I might update this to family.serif. And that will update all of my paragraphs. So that is the benefit of typography tokens. Oh, excuse me, one moment. Oh, tickly throat. Right. So do we have any questions relating to design tokens so far? Great. Well, we can move on to another really exciting aspect. And this is where I put the rush on myself, because I want to get this done. We're going to look at building design token themes. So if you've seen this prototyping template before, you might remember that I have a little light dark mode toggle in it. So if I go to view mode, checks if I'm a human being, and if I click my toggle, it switches between light and dark mode. I mean, that's pretty cool. But you can do that for your light mode and dark mode inside of Penpot as well. So that's why I thought this would be a fun demo. So I'm going to show you how to recreate this using design tokens and design token themes. So I'm going to start off by creating a board to hold this, and I'm going to call it light and dark mode. And I have my labels here, and I have my toggle, and I'm going to copy all of that as well over. I'm not worrying too much about the layout right now. I can improve upon that later. So I want to create design tokens for each of these. So again, I'm going to create another set, and I'm going to, for this one, I think I'm going to use, I'm going to turn a set on and off using a theme. That's essentially what themes do. If I go to create a theme, I could choose to enable and disable different sets. And so for my toggle, I'm going to enable and disable a light set and a dark set. I'll show you how to do this. It'll make it less confusing. But in the creation of the sets, I'm going to have a toggle. I'm actually going to group these sets. Now, grouping, you can turn an entire group on and off. But actually, more than anything, grouping is a useful way that you can organize your sets. It otherwise doesn't necessarily have much of an impact. You can just use it to stay organized. And if you have a lot of sets, it can make things a bit easier. So I have a global set. I'm going to create another set in this group, and I'm going to call it light. And I'm going to enable all of those sets so that I can see what I'm working with. Now, I'm going to work just on color for this one. So I have in here so I have a tickle that won't quit, and I am going to start with the background color. So I'm just going to call this board.background. And I happen to know that that is white. So I'm just gonna, in fact, I can see it here in the list. And I'm going to apply that there. Something cool I just want to show you, a really quick little preview. So you see, I've selected board background here. It's white. I've selected the board. The token is applied to the board. I see the resolved color in here. And some of you, maybe you've worked with tokens before, you might be thinking, oh, it'd be really cool if I could actually see the token here. Let me show you a little something. This, in light mode, so that I can tell the difference, is the Penpot preview of what will be released very soon. And you can see if I select these little colors here that are using tokens that I have enabled in here, color tokens, it's actually showing the name of the token in the design panel. It's so cool. It makes it much easier to work with, and because you can also have your layers panel open at the same time and you can still see the tokens that are applied. Also, if I go to the inspect panel, the design token is showing in there, as well as the active sets. So that is something really exciting you've got to look forward to very, very soon. I know I was whispering like that was a secret, like that'd be any good for my throat as well. Anyway, jumping back, right, light and dark mode toggle. Back into our tokens, into our light tokens. So I have my board background. This is my label color. So I'm going to call this label. Yeah, I'm just going to call it label. I don't care about that being a terrible name right now. I have, this is a gradient. I can't currently create tokens for gradients. I think they're probably coming down the track because they would also be a composite token. If you think about a gradient, it's made up of multiple colors at multiple positions. And but that's fine because my gradient is the same in light and dark mode. And I am going to have, okay, so let me think about the meaning of these little icons and their colors here. I have a toggle. When the toggle is enabled, it has this sort of circle around the outside of the icon. And so that would be indicative of a state. Or, actually, no, for this, I want it to be indicative that's a light. So I'm confusing myself. Toggle light background. And that is not white, but it's close enough right now. And this little purple color is my toggle light icon. And that is indicating that it is enabled. It is a purple icon on a white background. And I have the opposite for the dark one. So I have toggle dark background. Keep an eye on the time. That would be the same purple. You know what? I'm going to use references. What is my purple color? Speed up the process. Purple. And the label is going to be the same purple as well. See, I told you that using references could speed up the process. Working it out as I go. So toggle light icon, toggle dark background. It doesn't have a background, so I'm going to use transparent. I don't know if you know about this value. Really handy if you want something to disappear. And so toggle light icon. Let's create another reference value. That's white. Our board background is white. Our light background is white. And white is obviously white. Okay. And we have a dark color background here. In fact, I'm going to make the label the same color as that purple, the dark purple. Dark purple. This is not necessarily a lesson on how to name things well. Okay, so my label color is going to be dark purple. The contrast will be a bit nicer there as well. Okay. And I'm going to make sure that these are applied to the right thing. So my board is applied. My icon here, that is toggle dark icon. I didn't make one for that. That's white. Okay. Toggle dark background. Is there a background there? How's the background done? Oh, there we go. So I'm going to put that there behind the moon. And is that hidden behind something else? Yep, it's in this hidden folder. So let's move those up. There we go. This is why I use flex layouts. Makes it a lot easier. And that is transparent, the icon. And this is slightly tricky because the middle bit is a fill and the other bits are strokes. Not ideal way of doing things, Laura, but you're going to make it interesting on yourself. And that is your toggle light background. Okay. So now I've created all of these, keeping an eye on the time. This is if I want to create a light mode and dark mode, one of the ways that I find most effective is to create all of one of the modes first, because then what you can do is duplicate the set. And I'm going to call this dark. And then you have pre-populated in your set all of those token names, and you just need to change them to what your dark value should be. And so my board background will be dark purple. My label will be white. My dark background will be white. My dark icon will be purple. Kind of referencing, I don't know why I'm pointing at the screen. You can't see what I'm pointing at. I'm referencing this bit of the design here. My light background will be transparent. My light icon will be white. I don't need a white token. I don't need a... Oh, no, I do. Because if I disable it, it can't reference it. Okay, don't break your tokens, Laura. Right. Now, if this all comes together, we'll see whether I've managed it. Toggle light mode. So this is the theme, grouping my themes. Light, enable all of these light but not the dark set. Creating another theme, again, toggle, but for dark. enable toggle, but not light. Save the theme. Okay. Now I've created those themes, I have a little drop down here that gives me the options to choose between light, which is what's currently selected, and dark mode. Yes. So now we can switch between light mode and dark mode, and you can see that it switches the toggle like that. With 3 minutes to go. Oh, that was a relief. I was worried that I wouldn't get to that. So with a couple of minutes remaining, we maybe have time for 1 or 2 questions. Do we have a question? Any questions? I will also, if there are any there that we didn't get to yet, I will make sure that I jump back in later and answer your questions if I've missed anything. You can also ask me in the Penpot community, which is where you'll also be able to find this file. Straight after we finish, I'll jump over there and upload it. So do we have any questions? Aha, there we go. What are the main benefits of using tokens versus styles or just the components? That is a fantastic question. So if you look back at, I think, was it the last hands-on or the one before that? I actually talked about using design tokens inside of your component library. And so we can, you can use tokens inside your components. So if you think about tokens as being those smallest little values, and then components can utilize tokens, often your tokens are quite useful for variants as well. And tokens are really valuable as part of the development process. So if you want to create a shared language that works particularly well, tokens and components are great for that. If you are someone that's been working with Penpot for a long time, you might notice that there's also colors and typographies that you can create inside of Penpot as assets that get shared inside of your libraries that when you publish them in your team. And what I would say the difference between those is I think if you want to keep it simple, then use the colors and typographies inside of Penpot. If you are trying to build design systems and you want to build something that is going to work really well with your development team, that is going to be platform agnostic, so you can export your tokens. I can show you could do that. Here you can export your tokens as a JSON file or import your tokens from somewhere else that you've created. That's probably when you want to use tokens. Now, as I wrap up, there is on the Penpot community, there is a call out to understand your use cases for the Penpot MCP server. So if you are someone who is looking at using LLMs as part of your design process, who wants to be able to interact with Penpot using the MCP, there's some really cool demos out there if you check out in the community as well. But Penpot wants to better understand how you want to use that and what's actually valuable, what is actually genuinely useful as part of the design process, rather than just shoehorning AI into everything. So please jump into Penpot and the community, which is at community.penpot.app. I'm hoping that I got that right. And you can add it in there. There is also, if you missed it, an update to my UI design with Penpot course that is available at penpot.app/courses. We now have a text and typography unit up. So if you want to learn all about using text and typography in Penpot and in UI design in general, that course is free. There's loads of videos in there. There's a huge amount of resources, and we're really proud of it. And so you can find that latest module in there. And what else? Oh, remember, please subscribe if you want to be the first to find out about these hands-on demos and the new ones that are coming up in 2026. Or, of course, you can join the Penpot community. I've referred to it so many times today. That's because it's great. I'm in there every day. It's a really great supportive community and a place to be the first to find out what's going on with Penpot, get sneak peeks, get previews, and get help with if you have any support questions or anything that you're struggling with, how to do it in Penpot. I'm often in there. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to those who joined us live. I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate your questions. I appreciate your comments and your feedback. And we will see you again very soon. Goodbye.